Good afternoon, everybody. My apologies. I am running late. It seems to be the story of my life. But in my defense, we are going to the autism exhibition tomorrow for Friday and Saturday. So everything has been very rushed here at the M-Word. So apologies. My name is Lavinia, and I am director and founder of the M-Word and indeed Emotional Problem Solving. And I'm joined by Yasmin, our social media manager, who has been chastising me for being late. Let's move on. Yasmin, thank you so much again for joining me. It's always really lovely to have you on board with just seeing things from a different perspective, really. Today, I just wanted to explore the feelings around sort of feeling overwhelmed, as we said. Yes, we were thinking about overwhelmed, and it happens so often, does it not? But also with parents feeling very blamed, and then they too feeling overwhelmed, and that feeling of not being believed is quite common. Would you say quite common?
Yeah.
We're hearing, the amount of referrals that we have that parents feel very not believed, but obviously we also have lots of young people who are not believed. So I just wondered, is there any way you want to start today about your experiences of not being believed and how that was?
Well, right off the gate, let's start with a little bit of Cam's slander. No offense to them. Lovely service, I'm sure, if you get the right person. So when I went to go and see Cam's, I was 16, I think. I was kind of newly 16. And it took a while to get an appointment. And I went to my first appointment and got told, you don't have an appointment. You're lying. You've made up this appointment. And I was like, do you seriously think I'd drag my mum to drive me all the way to the hospital just for fun? And then my second appointment that I actually managed to go in, I ended up, talking to this woman, and she seemed like she really didn't want to be there. She didn't care about what I was saying. She was just there because she was paid to be there. In fact, she was eating her lunch in the middle of the appointment. She said, "You don't mind, do you?" And what am I supposed to say? Yes, I bloody well do mind. Go and do that later. What am I supposed to say? And then at the end of it, she put her notepaper down, and she folded her hands, and she went, I'm going to be completely honest with you. You have got depression. And I was like, tell me something I don't know. And she went, but I'm not going to diagnose you with it because I know what you teenagers are like. You're just going to throw it around as an excuse for everything. And I was like, I don't want to tell anybody I want to kill myself. Why? I've come to you because it was last resort.
Yeah.
You really think I'm going to go around telling people, by the way, did you know I've been diagnosed with depression? So I left the appointment feeling like, well, that was a waste of time. I've stressed myself up looking forward to this appointment, going, oh my God, I've really got to make sure that I had to be there. I had to be on time. I had to be punctual. I stressed myself out doing all of that, only to be then told, you have got this thing, but I'm not going to help you with it. And she chastised me quite a lot, really, when I turned up by myself, because obviously with CAMS, if you're 14, you have a choice whether you bring a parent with you or you go by yourself. And you were working at CAMS at the time, and we had a very open discussion about it where you said, I'll be honest, I really don't want to go. And I was like, well, I don't really want you going either. So we kind of agreed on that. And she told me off the entire time for not having you there because she would like to talk to my parent/guardian. And then halfway through the appointment, she tried to make out it was your parenting that led me to feeling depressed. And then after that, she said, would you like me to talk to your parent about this appointment? And I said no. And I signed a piece of paper saying I do not want anything that went out in this room to go outside of this room to be spoken to about with anybody. Only to then find out later, even though I'd signed a document, she went over my head and called you anyway. So it was like I lost trust with them. So I've never wanted to go back because I'm like, I've had such a bad experience. It's really kind of burnt me that I don't want to touch it with a barge pole.
And then from my experience, obviously I had the phone call, and thank goodness we had talked about it quite extensively. So when I realised it was Cam's ringing me about you, the first question I had straight off was, are you knowingly calling me because you've had authorization from Yasmin? And there was this, and I said, I know you haven't, because Yasmin made it very clear beforehand that she wanted to do this independently. She is 16 and therefore she is entitled to everybody respecting her opinion with this. And then the professional got quite uppity with me, not realizing what I did for a job, and said, you know, there are things that need to be discussed. You clearly have a very poor relationship with one another. And I said, I'm going to stop you right there. Firstly, to reiterate that this is not going to be a discussion. And secondly, if we didn't have such a close rapport, how would I know that I'm not supposed to be having a discussion with you? So that's the other side of it. And of course, not many parents would maybe have that discussion that you and I had. I suppose people listening to us would say, why on earth would Lavinia not want to be going to CAMS? And I suppose it's because of my experiences of CAMS. I knew that they wouldn't assess you as a high risk. I also knew that it was really important to you that you didn't feel under pressure to speak worrying about my opinion or what I might think. I needed you to go in there to say it how it was for you without feeling bad or guilty or worried, you know, all these things that crop up. I just needed you to have a safe vacuum where you could go and say how it really was. And even that wasn't respected, even though you'd said, I don't want you to have contact. My parents are very aware that I'm here. You know, we've had this discussion. So all along the way, it just kind of reiterated what I didn't believe in. You know, if we take young people seriously, unless there's a potentially really high risk, and bearing in mind lots of people don't know what I do, I am constantly assessing risk, particularly when I've got children who are feeling extremely miserable. So that was quite an eye-opener for us, but we did go back, didn't we?
Well, I think what hurt me the most was the fact I'd had to slowly over a few years get the courage to go, I actually need outside help. I had to get to that point, and I remember calling you while I was crying on the phone, and I said I need to go to the doctors about it because it's getting really bad. I'm scaring myself. And you said if you feel that that's what you need to do, go to the doctors, make an appointment, go and, you know. And so I actively made that decision. I made a very grown-up decision of I know I need help. I could recognize that. And then to have somebody treat me like a child, even though I'd gone to get the help, and almost just not respect my right. If I'm capable enough to recognize I need help, why on earth do you need to go and talk to my parents? You know, and what I find ironically funny is you ended up working with her a couple of months later, and I was like, "Oh, have you talked to this person?" And you were like, "Oh yeah, she's a bit, isn't she?" And I was like, what was I saying about her? Yeah, you know. And even now, unfortunately, I hear a lot of stories where it's kind of a running joke between people my age or Cam's kind of age, where you make fun of the advice they give you because it's always, have a hot bath if you want to kill yourself. Have a hot bath. Have a cup of tea. Relax. And it's like, sure, that's what I'll do. Or it's like, go for a nice walk. That will stop you from wanting to hurl yourself off a bridge. Don't worry about it. You know?
We've got some comments, which is really lovely. People are hearing this. So we've got, this sounds so similar to my experiences too. Another one, I've never trusted them either. You're in good company. I could never fully open up because I didn't know if they were sharing things. That is very interesting. I'll come back to that in a sec. And then the question of how can you get professionals to take you seriously? I always hear stories of doctors who aren't listening to people's concerns and fob you off. So this is definitely, yeah. Just going back to the, I don't know if they're sharing things. So I don't know if people recognize the phrase, and we went through a time band of the NHS banging this out to all clinicians, where we had to start the session by saying, this is a safe space, it's highly confidential, whatever you tell me will stay in this room unless you tell me something that is a risk to yourself or a risk to others. When we now work within CAMS, CAMS is very much about not singling out one individual to name and blame. So information is shared repeatedly. And what we find is that you will have a new referral coming in, and it is discussed between 3 or 4 individuals who are covering triage. And then if you are accepted into CAMS, it goes to the MDT meeting. And so it is shared amongst the team so that whatever the outcome is, you as a team will be blamed rather than you as a clinician for making a decision about whether you accept or not accept. So the team that you were assessed by, Yasmin, one individual, then it was a subsequent other individual where we both went, that information would have been fed back to a team at the end of the morning where there would have been 3 or 4, whoever was on duty, and it would have been a way or nay. And a good consultant will have led the team and may well take on board the comments from other professionals, or you might get one consultant who decides, well, actually, I'm going to make the ultimate decision, and that's that. So it's quite tricky because it feels like a kind of like postcode lottery with it all. You don't know, who you're going to get on the day, basically. I suppose from my perspective, what really made me cross was the fact that they hadn't listened to you. We had, in your words, a very adult decision following an adult discussion. You'd gone and done the process of going to the GP, saying what there was needed. You'd been very much believed and treated as an adult by the GP, who'd already been very aware of your difficulties at school. So you just needed that last little bit. But from me having that phone call, which I wasn't expecting because of course you and I had discussed it, and again, the professional wasn't acutely aware of what I did for a job, so had no idea that I was always constantly having to risk assess. And that was really quite brutal because it's like, well, you're not respecting the fact that my daughter has come to you independently, nor are you respecting her wishes, but also how dare you assert your opinion on something you know nothing about because you haven't listened to her quite clearly. And that was really hard because I was thinking, Lemonek, I'm a professional. Do I do this? Do I naturally do this every day in my clinical practice? But also just how many of my colleagues are doing exactly what you experienced, or what I've experienced. So for me, it was a very good learning journey. But I also know that we have the experiences just as bad at school. So, you've had great difficulty with PE, particularly in the last 2 years. And we repeatedly asked for support individually, but also, collectively. And at one point, I remember you relaying to me that you'd said to the PE teacher, I'm not scared of you, but you need to be scared of my mum.
Yeah.
And I was like, thanks. And when the PE teacher said to me, "That doesn't scare me, what does your mum do?" You said what?
I can't remember what I said, but I remember telling her, basically, I said, you know what, because it was in my last year of school, and I almost had a perfect record of no PE lessons, but I unfortunately blimped in one, so I did one lesson for my entire last year. And I suffered from really painful periods at the time, so I had a letter from my doctor saying she doesn't even have to be in school, you know. So I said, I'm not going to do PE, and I had a note from you, and she, again, and this is the thing, is I know it's autistic, I know it's been drilled into me so much from when I was a young kid that you are to respect your elders, you know, blah, blah. So even now, I'm 20, turning 21, and I'm still terrified, going, oh, I don't want to say to this 40-year-old woman, you know, shh, I'm talking, listen to me, you know, because I feel like I'm being so rude, but I'm not. You know, I'm trying to ease myself out of, I'm not a child anymore. I am another adult, so talk to me as another adult. But obviously, I'm a 6 foot, 16-year-old girl, and this 5'5" woman is glaring at me, going, everybody, every girl in that changing room goes through periods. You're just being ridiculous. You need to suck it up. You need to. And I was like, lady, I have a doctor's note, and we'd been talking about this teacher for a while, and we knew I didn't like her anyway. And I said, but I have a note from my mum. And she said, that's not good enough. And I was like, okay, because, like, obviously we have a very close relationship. So I already knew I'd get the train home, we'd be watching TV or something, and I'd go, you know what, I have got a good bit of gossip for you. This teacher said this to me. So I was like, you know, because I was getting to the point where I was like, you know what, I've got a couple of weeks left of school. Do whatever. I'm not doing the lesson. Go away. You know. And then I said, I'm not scared of you anymore, because it was like, you know, whatever. And I said, but my mum, you know, you have what I like to call different levels of anger. And you have this one, like, golden level, and I always call it the dragon level. And it only comes out like once every 4 or 5 years, but when it comes out, everybody knows about it. And so I was like, this might be the golden event that causes it to come out, but I don't know. You know. So, you know, and the thing is, I was thinking about it the other day. When we have young people who are struggling in school, it actually physically hurts me now, because I wouldn't say my school journey was the worst. Like, I wasn't like being shoved in lockers, or, you know, it wasn't the stereotypical movie bullying, but it was a pretty bad experience. And just thinking that other kids are going through even a fraction of what I went through makes me angry. It makes me so angry. And I feel like parents can't express their anger because they'll be told, you're being dramatic, or, you know, your kid's a troubled kid, you know, it's your kid's fault, it's your fault. And it's like, it's not. It's the environment that you're putting us in, and, you know, we're struggling, and it makes me angry. That's why I said to Michelle, people need to pay me to go in, because I've got a lot of pent up anger towards my school people, and I am ready to get it out. So for a low price of, like, maybe a takeaway, I will go in and I will verbally fist fight your teachers. I'm ready.
That's quite interesting. I'm just going to come back to this, but I'm just going to read some of our feedback here. So somebody's saying, I didn't do PE either. Fall about laughing. Huge sensory overload and so many steps involved. Yes, there is. The changing room, big echoey sports hall. Absolutely. I'm dyspraxic, so I'll probably fall over. Yep, you and me. Somebody else has put self-advocacy, Yasmin. Yay. And the golden level. Now, I'm willing to bet that's one of the, you know, the ladies down south. So just going back to that, I just wanted to kind of reiterate something here, and it's quite crucial, is it not? The young people don't have a voice, but neither do the parents, which is a bit scary, isn't it? Because we should, as adults to adults, i.e., parents to schools, be taken very seriously, but also work much better in partnerships. And I also have a real issue about, why do we say that it's really important our children has a voice where they can say things, and yet fundamentally over and over and over and over again, day in, day out, young people are just told to suck it up. But parents are also told to suck it up. And what I really struggle with is, if you don't have a voice, what then happens? Do we all have our young people experiencing what you experienced, in that it doesn't matter what you think and feel, just get on with it? When in actual fact, what you're trying to convey is, I can't get on with it. It's not, I don't want to, I can't. And when you see parents in distress because school is not supporting their child, or indeed them, it's a bit of a problem, isn't it? It's quite a big problem.
Yeah. Also, what I find with schools, they're very clever with the way they say it. So, in a classroom, they could say, if you have an issue, you need to get your parents to come and talk to me. When you bring your parents in, they'll say it in front of your parents, and they say it in such a way where it sounds like they're trying to be supportive, but it's always, if you had an issue, you should have come to me. You need to be an adult. Your parents can't do everything for you. And it's like, well, then where do I sit? I come to you by myself, and you're saying, no, if you've got an issue, you need to bring your parents in so I can talk to an adult. But then when I bring my adults, you almost dob me in, trying to make out that I haven't been able to handle it. And it's like, normally when I kind of brought you into school things, it was because like it was the final kind of level. Like, you know, I couldn't do any more. I really hated trying to bring you in, because obviously you had your own things going on, and I thought, well, I need to be able to handle it. But when I had teachers telling me, you know, no, I need to talk to your parent, I need to talk to your guardian, I need to talk to the adult in your life about this, I can't talk to you. And then I'd be stood next to you while we're having a talk with a teacher, and they'd say, oh, if you had an issue, you should have talked to me. Or they'll go, oh, you're growing up now, you're not a child anymore, you need to be able to handle these situations by yourself. And it's like, well, then where do I go? I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't understand.
Yes. And when you were saying things like this, I was immediately struck by, and I don't know if you remember this, but in primary school, we moved up to year 1 with you. And obviously, everybody in reception would walk in together into the classroom. But when we got to year 1, oof, no parents coming into the classroom, you're out there. And then you get this understanding that by the time you hit secondary school, there's no communication. It's severed. So I hear lots of parents conveying this to me in reports. You know, I don't know what's going on with my child because school is not liaising with me. And I hear again repeatedly, you know, I've left a message with the teacher, I've asked for a call back, I'm not getting there, or I've emailed them and there's no responses. It feels like there is this game that's being played, knowing that if you keep going around enough times, you'll just get dizzy and give up. And yet, that's so disempowering us, because it makes it nothing about them and everything about us. We are left swimming in this pool of shit. And it is shit because it's horrendous. So, you know, and I've spoken to some lovely teachers in the same way that I've spoken to some lovely, you know, CAMHS clinicians. But unfortunately, it feels like the system is the one that causes the aggravation, in that there is a way of doing things, they have their way, and we have to try and find a way of getting through that. For some families, they find that if they've got, say, for example, a GP or CAMHS or community paediatrics, that might be a way in, but that still isn't foolproof, because as I know, throughout my entire times with working for the NHS, once I was given a mobile phone like my colleagues were, unlike them, they would not give out their mobile number. They would insist that their caseload would have to call in as per duty, call in to the office and leave a message. Well, quite often, as parents have learned, you can leave a message, but you might not pick up the message as clinician for either a whole day or the next day. And it could be that that information needs to get to the clinician quite swiftly. And I absolutely hated the fact that I was always on the receiving end, waiting for this information to come to me. So very quickly, I would always give out my number to my clients on my caseload, because that way we both knew I'd get the information pretty instantaneous, whether it's a text or whether it was a phone call. But the wrath that I got from my colleagues was, you're going to have your clients ringing you up all the time. And I said, well, that's not going to be possible, is it? Because one, I switched my phone off at the end of the day. And two, they're not going to ring me to interrupt me when I'm in clinic, because everybody knows that everybody's busy. What they want is to know that they can liaise with me quickly. I can get the information quickly. I can respond quickly if I'm needed. So there's very much a system in place. That is the problem, is they're not, because if people cannot and will not respond because of the system, that then has a further impact on us, doesn't it, as parent, as young person. So I don't know what you think about the system. Do you think it's a system that could be changed, or do you think it's you know, just a load of codswallop?
I think, unfortunately, the system at the moment is more like a video game. There are levels and you get 3 lives per round, and if you waste them, you have to start all over again right at the bottom, you know, and each level you face a slightly different, you know, villain until you get to the big boss, but you could be playing for ages and still not get there, you know, and it's unfortunate, because I went to a system that I thought I could believe in and put my trust in, and I've been left thinking I can't trust you, because if we weren't close and you had never told me guess who called me, I would be none the wiser. You know, and granted, what I talked to this woman about was my life, and you've been there, but maybe I've worded it or phrased it in ways that you hadn't heard before, which are quite intimate, you know. Like, I really like creative writing. I've been doing it for years, but it's only in the past couple of months I've allowed you to read my writing, because it's something so intimate, you know. And
yeah,
when I gave you my writing saying, can you read this, I did it. It was my choice. It was my choice to say, I give you permission to look at this very intimate piece of me. When that consent gets taken away from you, that's really, and now I'm like, well, what if you hadn't told me she'd called? She could have told you all these things about me, and I would have never known. You know, and that's scary.
But also, I think I also worry, Yasmin, that I mean, thank goodness we did have the discussion. So I was kind of so taken aback. Why are you ringing me when we brought, you know, I know what the rules are. You know, what if I hadn't known? And then she started conveying things that you never would want anybody to know. They were said in a very safe, or supposedly safe, vacuum. I think that's really quite disturbing. And apart from the fact having lunch in front of you is also really despicable. Like, I used to really cringe when I needed a cup of coffee because I hadn't had a chance to have a drink. And, you know, obviously I need to speak. I need to keep myself lubricated with water. But I would still feel bad about that.
But I remember, because she was sat across from me, and so she was eating, and clearly whatever we were talking about, I was getting quite emotional about it. So I started crying, and I really... I don't like crying in front of people a lot. It's normally, you know, it has to be pretty bad for me to start crying. And I'm not a cute crier. So I have not quite got that skill. So I'm crying for a couple of minutes. And then she kind of realised, oh, I should offer her a tissue. So she just slapped the tissue box across the table at me and went, here. And it was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm in a comforting place to talk about things, you know. And then I'm telling her about, you know, it got so bad a couple of weeks ago. I was awake all night trying to talk myself out of walking 3-4+ miles just to get to one specific bridge so I could off myself. And she's going, it's probably because of your mother. She's not a good parent. Why did you not bring her? I want to talk to her. And it was like, well, it's my appointment. She doesn't need to be here. And what I think gets me so annoyed about the fact that she called you was I signed a document. I signed a document saying I do not want you contacting anybody about this.
Mm.
And if I'd gone to court, that document would have held up because I signed it believing that that was my right. And she has just gone and violated that right that I've had, and I didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. There's a couple of pointers here that need to be said as well. I constantly get told to suck it up. We love this phrase today, don't we? I needed to leave a lesson, have a panic attack, and the teacher said, are you sure you need to leave? We're learning about X today. Like, oh, sorry. Yep, I'll just turn this off. Yeah, not a problem. I'll sit right back down. Yes, hon, I do need to leave. I can't breathe. That was from Sophie. And then struggled for 3 years. Our children don't tell teachers about problems as they worry the school it will inform the social workers. That's horrible, isn't it? It's a constant battle when the trauma is triggered. I really feel for you because, again, some professionals, they're so hooked into this textbook method of, you know, if you believe they're at risk, if you believe there's a safeguarding issue, you must do X, Y, Z. And I do believe that a lot of this is about experience, and you do need to have a very experienced clinician going, in the grand scheme of things, this is concerning, but it's not a safeguarding issue. Because the minute you're saying it's a safeguarding issue, you're then looking at social workers, and they don't always get it either. So somebody else has put, I think the system is so wrong, totally underfunded, more money for more resources and better training, especially about neurodiversities. Well, you know, there's something that we need to really appreciate here because, you know, we talked a few minutes ago about the mechanisms. So I have seen over a 30-year period of our frontline forces shrinking. It'll be the same with teachers. They're shrinking all the time. Classes are getting bigger. And what you find is that if the front line is shrinking, effectively, where is that money going? And we're getting paid more money now from the NHS than ever before. But the difficulty we've got is that there are much more teams involved. So, for example, just take it very simplistically, we don't use paper notes anymore. Everything's done electronically. And the reason being is because in theory, it doesn't matter which department you go to. In theory, a computer should be able to pick up where your file sits and adds to it so that it's only one ever roaming document. Well, now who's going to man all of that? Who's going to make sure that the computers are up and running every day? Who's going to make sure that the data is protected? Who's going to make sure that the information is put in the correct file within a file so that the data can be drawn off it to ensure that we are maximizing the right money goes to the right place at the right time over the right amount of sessions. So what I've relayed to you is actually 4 different jobs. They all have to be paid for. So all that money that's been extracted from the front line now has to go into those 4 respective streams. Well, who manages those streams? So now we need managers, and managers generally cost 4 times as much as a frontline person. So now we've got all these very expensive managers, and who manages those managers? So now we've got more managers, and so it goes on until you realize that actually the frontline workforce has shrunk so much. There is barely any money dribbling in to the services. Now, what really is frustrating is that quite often we have the news announce the government has given another £1 billion to CAMS, or, you know, millions, or, you know, this particular area will be having money pulled into it. And it doesn't matter how much of that money you think's coming out, you know deep down that there is probably, if you're lucky, 1/10 of that amount actually going to where it's needed. So to give you an absolute classic example, we had that elderly gentleman, Sir Tom, knighted a few months before he died, who walked around his garden and raised over £1 million. It was staggering, and it was all for the NHS. Within a very short time frame, we realised that the company that was set up by his family had actually taken nearly sort of like 60% of it. So that now left 40% of it going to the NHS. Where exactly would it have gone? Because 60% of just £1 million isn't very much. How would you decide where it was going to go? And so before you know it, it's just swallowed up into the upper sort of level of directors of mechanism, you know, where it's going to go. So really, the dribbling doesn't help. And it doesn't matter how many people are working and how many people pay their national insurance. It doesn't matter how much tax we pay. At the end of the day, if you've got a very top-heavy mechanism, what you find is that the money isn't going where it's actually needed. That's quite an eye-opener, isn't it? How do you convey that when in actual fact, you and I were struggling to support you when you most needed the help? How does it happen when the mechanisms in schools are not designed fit for purpose, or indeed they have national health? If they're not designed for purpose, how does it help us? And that's the bit that I need to kind of think about. How do we help ourselves assert what we need, knowing that the mechanisms are really, you know, we're up against it, aren't we? How can you fight a system when you've got to assert what you need to get? Any ideas?
To be honest, I wouldn't even know where to start. All I could think is, you know, if somebody were to say to me, look, I'm really struggling with this mental health issue, I unfortunately would not signpost them in the direction of the National Health Service. I would strongly advise it. Like, you know, if somebody... I also find straight away, if you go to kind of the doctors, they automatically try and put drugs into your system. And they try and treat that for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody's depression, anxiety, bipolar, whatever, is the same. So they're trying to recommend this one, like, magical pill. But it doesn't always fix whatever, you know. That's the thing. People go to the doctors thinking it's clearly just me, you know, and they're thinking, well, I need a quick fix to fix it. You know, I need it pronto. I need it overnight, magical. I'm okay now. And sometimes I do feel like they unfortunately make out that they can give you something and you'll be fine. You'll be right as rain the next morning. Just go to bed, you'll be fine. And that's not true. I mean, we moved 3 years ago and my mental health definitely improved after we moved. But I still have moments where I'm like, oh God, am I still doing this? Are we still going through this? You know? And it's not as bad as it was, but I'm not fixed. I'm not a new person. I've still got that damage. I've still got that trauma. I'm just in my own way learning how to deal with it and fix it, because nobody else can really do that for me. If I can't explain it correctly to what's going on in there, I have to do it myself. And luckily I've come from a very supportive family where, you know, I have had kind of, I've had you and, you know, I've had Dad kind of going, okay, we need to slowly work through this, but you can't do it for me. And that's the thing. And it's very hard, and it can be very traumatizing where, you know, sometimes I do wake up at night and I go, I'm still here. I'm still doing this. I feel like I'm in the same circle. Why am I, you know, nothing's changed. But then, you know what, the next week I'll be like, you know what, this is the best day ever. I have a great life. You know, it's fantastic. You know, so there's not much I can do about it. I just kind of have to go with the flow, so to speak, I guess.
Somebody's put here they're a teacher and that throughout their degree they had zero training on autism. Same with nursing, zero training on nursing. The only time it was really mentioned was when we could pick to write an essay focused on it. Of course, no one picked it because we had never covered it before. Yeah, get it. I mean, now universities are beginning to put on master's courses and obviously talk about it, thinking about it. But I still think it comes back to this understanding of what can we do about it, because it's personal to us. There's that very lovely phrase of in a film, somebody saying, one character saying to another character, it's not meant personally. Yeah, but it was personal to me, says the other person. And this is so much the case. It's personal to me, it's personal to you. And what I really want to convey is thinking about the solutions. If you own it, if it is a problem for you, it's thinking about how can we go forward with this, because there is something about safety in numbers. And a lot of parents have learned that if they can't get access through CAMS, they need to go and find somewhere else. So, of course, we've got the lovely Zen Ninja who says, right, no problem, I will come and fight your corner. I think the irony is, you know, she was a parent in the same position and thought, do you know what, I can fight for this, I can fight for other parents. So schools will now listen to her as a professional. So it's a bit weird, you know, if you're a professional, they give you credence over and above parents. Now, like it or lump it, I would just assert my authority as a clinician whenever I had to deal with, shall we say, teachers who weren't really listening to you and were trying to fob me off. I would just put my professional hat on. And you've said to me that I'm scary when you see me in clinical mode because I behave very differently. I don't really know what I do differently, but there we go. But I am very assertive. I do have a very, this is how it is, this is what we're going to do. And, you know, don't mess with me. You know, I know my stuff. But nevertheless, a lot of people don't really understand what they're dealing with. And so what I want to reiterate again today when you're trying to empower yourself is, if you don't know what's going on, what you need to do is monitor it and keep recording that information. So, you know, we've always encouraged your writing, because at least then you were getting it down, you were writing things, you could always go back and look at it and go, do I still feel that way now, or have I made progress? But also encouraging you to talk about it. And I don't think we really encourage people to talk about what's going on for them.
No, I mean, I've had friends, you know, say, you're so open with your words. I can't do that. And it's like, you can do that. You just haven't been brought up to do that. So me doing it seems like a really alien concept. But for me, it's normal. Like, I had a friend send me a song, and he said, tell me what this song makes you feel like. So I sent him an entire paragraph about how this song made me feel, and he went, oh my god, you get it. And I was like, yeah. And he went, I've shown this song to loads of people, but nobody got it like that, and I can't write it the way you write it, because I just can't do that. I can't write my emotions. And it's like, oh, well, okay. And then we did the workshop a couple of weeks ago, and Michelle said, oh, you're really self-confident. And it's like, really? Because it's like a duck on the water, isn't it? Nice, gentle gliding. I look fabulous. I look so confident about it. And underneath I'm going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So, and I think the thing is, with age, I'm getting tired of the stereotypes, and, I'm getting tired of feeling like I have to hide what's going on. And maybe I'm a bit before my time. Maybe not everybody is quite ready to hear what I have to say, but you know what? I will keep coming back on Unearthing and bothering everybody with my opinions. It's fine. So yeah.
I think it's important, the communication. Don't know about you, but I think by talking lots, and even it doesn't matter how many times we come back and revisit the conversations, having those conversations are really quite crucial to how you feel about you now compared to how you felt about you when you were really struggling with school. And one of the things that I remember saying to you, not very often, admittedly, but in the beginning when you were having more and more days off and I was having to cringe and ring up and say, really sorry, Yasmin will not be in today because she's feeling extremely low, or she's feeling extremely anxious, or she's got heavy periods. I'm thinking, why am I having to say this? But I would then say to you, right, okay, just because you're not at school doesn't mean you can't do your work. It's not that you physically can get there, but you can do your work. And that over time gave you a feeling of, okay, yeah, she's right, I can do this. And I don't have to worry about, I'm 10 paces from the bathroom, it's all right. Or yes, I can do some of my reading in bed and not feel horrendous, or I'm not having to be anxious about trying to get 2 different trains and trying to fight my way into school. You didn't have to have all of that all the time. So there was that real, because we had the communication, because we had the understanding, it was trying to problem solve together. How do we best help you still continue with your learning? And I think a lot of families don't feel able, or perhaps don't value, the enormity of having these conversations, because teenagers with the best will in the world are either all right and off to their room and shut the door. A lot of autistic teenagers tend to isolate themselves a lot more and would rather eat on their own, eat independently, and not spend family time. So for a lot of families, that can be really challenging, because it's like, well, where are they? Where are the opportunities for me to have these discussions? So give us your wisdom. What do you have to say about that? How do we entice parents to kind of have these conversations? How do we entice teenagers to be open to having conversations?
Well, regarding teenagers being open about it, I think it takes a bit of time, to feel confident to talk about it. But I think with parents, the way they approach it is really important, because if you make it feel too much like a clinical interview conversation, it is going to terrify somebody. It's quite, especially if it's not something you normally do. If it's out of the norm, we are very quick to pick up on that and go, oh God, even now, sometimes you say my name in a certain way and what do I say to you? What have I done now? I know I haven't done anything.
That's when I usually get very perplexed and go, nothing. I just want to talk to you.
In the kitchen and exactly. We're in the kitchen and you go, oh, Yasmin, and I'm like, oh God, what? And I'm racking my brain going, did I put the dishes away wrong? Did I make too much noise? What have I done? You know? So I think just, it's kind of like approaching a rabbit, isn't it, really? You want to be slow, careful, because a wrong move, they will just bolt for the hills, you know? And I think the confidence that you build makes it easier, for sure. Because, you know, again, I've had friends who say, I don't understand how you can talk to your mum about all this stuff. And it's like, it sounds sad, but I mean, you're kind of my only option now. But even when I was younger, I was like, my mum's my best friend. I can talk to her about anything, you know. Sometimes I might have been like, oh, I don't really want to talk about that. But then it would come out later. But it's not like you interrogated me. There was no like light being shone in my eyes, and I wasn't tied to a chair going, right, tell me exactly what you've been up to, you know. So when I started college, I got invited to a party a couple of miles away from home at like 10 p.m. and I went, I'm not going to go because I feel like I'm putting myself in a dangerous situation. And they all thought it was because my mum was being like overbearing, and it was like, no, because my mum has had a very open conversation with me. If I'd wanted to go, you probably would have gone, okay, I don't 100% agree with it, but, you know, go. But because we've kind of had those open conversations, I felt confident to go, realistically, I don't feel safe putting myself into that situation, so I'm making the ultimate decision of not going. You know, and because we've had this openness, I think now I'm not so worried about saying things. It might take me a little while to finally voice whatever thought it is I've had, but normally I'm really bad at keeping quiet about something. So.
You're a bit of a hoarder though, because you will sit on information, and like it drives me nuts when you go, and I go, yes, and then you're like, never mind. What? No, you said it now. But generally, if it's something that's brewing, it might brew for several weeks or several months. Eventually it comes out. But can you just try and think then, how is it we have such an open relationship? What is it we do that kind of gets you not opening the floodgates? Because it isn't like, well, sometimes it is, but not very often. You know, mainly opening floodgates is about F1 at the moment, but that's another thing, isn't it? But, you know, what is it that makes it open for you to kind of go, I need to kind of just get this off my chest?
I don't feel like I have to say anything. I think that's what happens. Because, like, you know, when you're like sitting in silence with somebody and it's a comfortable silence, so you feel like you can suddenly just drop into conversation, you know, you don't have to go like, oh, do you want to talk about something? Or, you know, you don't have to awkwardly say something to get a conversation going. You're just so comfortable with the person that you can kind of just, you know, and sometimes I say things to you and I'm like, oh God, why did I say that? Sometimes I just don't have I have no control over what comes out. So sometimes when I do the, oh, and then say something and then go, never mind, it's normally because I'm like, actually that, you know, we did that the other day. I was watching a video of Mick Schumacher nearly crying on Facebook. And you went, what? And I went, oh, and then I'm like, no, I remember you're not super interested in that. So I feel like, oh, I shouldn't say the rest of it. But by then you're like, she said something, you know?
Do you think we have to go through stages to get where we are now? I'm just thinking back, because when you had difficulties with woking, I did a lot of driving. I would come prepared with snacks and a drink, and you would be like, you know, and I would just be driving, you know, going, yeah, you know. But that 20-minute home, by the time you got home, you were much more serene, much more able to kind of just bring it down a level that you could talk to me about a lot of things rather than just venting. But I also know very early on we learned that actually if you needed to talk, that was probably the best way, because you hated being looked at. So when I was driving, you knew that I wasn't looking at you. So sometimes I think, you know, when we have these conversations sitting face to face, that almost puts a barrier for our autistic children, because actually that's a bit intense, you know. But I also know it's the same when we are walking the dogs. You know, I have to look where I'm going because I'm constantly tripping up over thin air, I might add, but you know, I'll find anything to trip up. You know, so that's another way of doing it. You know, or we're going around the, you know, Tesco aisles and we're talking about something, or oh, that reminds me. So I think a lot of it is about not having this intensity of we're sitting down to have a discussion. It's actually doing something, whether it's me driving or, you know, we're walking the dogs, or whether we're walking around Tesco's. They are not focusing on you, so you feel more relaxed to kind of not feel judged, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of that. I also think sometimes when I'm having a conversation where somebody's like sat in front of me, I'm trying so hard to go, okay, I don't like eye contact. I don't like eye contact. I've been living with you for 20 years. I do not like direct eye contact. I still struggle. So I'm trying to talk about whatever I'm thinking. And I'm also, in the same time, I'm going, okay, I've got to look them in the eye, quickly look away, do a brief shift of the room. Okay, we can go back to looking at eyes. And then, you know, and I'm so busy trying to kind of go on autopilot to make sure I am looking at you, because otherwise I'd be talking to you like this all the time. You know, but I can't do that, so I have to do like short bursts of eye contact so you know I'm talking to you, but it's not enough to make me uncomfortable. So I'm so busy focusing on trying to make sure I come across somewhat normal that I can hold eye contact for a couple of seconds, you know. So I don't have the free space to kind of ramble about whatever I'm thinking about. I'm trying so hard to make sure, okay, I don't want to fidget too much. I've got to keep eye contact. I don't want to make that noise because that's going to be really embarrassing because everyone's going to hear, you know, I'm too busy thinking of other things, trying to portray myself as a normal person, you know?
I was thinking as well, and I've just realized we're really close to time, but I was thinking as well about the fact that I didn't lead the conversations. It would be about what was on your mind. And I think that would have also been quite helpful because you were leading it. It was what you wanted to explore about. And I think sometimes when we place the demand, you know, a very simple question of, you know, how was your day? And if it's a vague question and allows anything to come about, that's okay. But if it's a direct question like, you know, what was the teacher doing today? You know, you know, how did you get on with your maths test? You know, it's a demand again, isn't it? Go on.
I was just going to say, the other way to look at it, I kind of feel like it's a very English situation, isn't it? You know, it's kind of skirt round it. You know, when you're just thinking like, oh God, that was so English of me to not actually come to the point, but skirt round it, and then we'll eventually get there at some point.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that given everything we've talked around today, the sucking it up buttercup is really just you know, we're making it as difficult as possible for you as an agency to access support, when in actual fact, what you and I have learned in a very short period of time, and we could talk endlessly about all of these, but what we've learned is by listening to one another and opening the communication channels, we begin to see there are things that we can actually do ourselves. But also we've been able to kind of monitor things, whether it's through your own writing or whether it's through me keeping diaries, even writing things on calendars, or just by having, you know, when we've gone and investigated through health, just keeping an understanding and a log of everything that's going on and the difficulties. We actually do learn to problem solve quite a lot of it. And I think what I want to convey to parents today, as well as young people, is we all have a voice. We're all entitled to opinion. But unless we monitor things to be able to build that evidence, it's really difficult to kind of then be very assertive about, no, this is what we do need. And I think one of the things that we must remember is collectively we seem to do better, but also we should never ever be intimidated or told by professionals, you don't know what you're doing, when in actual fact, yes, we do know what we're experiencing. We might not have a solution, but collectively we've got a greater chance of getting a solution. And although there are lots of parents who come to us knowing that they're going to get that professional saying, I believe you, this is what we need to do, I think equally there are lots of families out there who could learn to have better communication with their children to kind of get a better handle of what do we need to think about doing, so that collectively it feels like a team approach rather than one-on-one. Don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, unfortunately there's no manual.
No.
There is no manual. But we've said it multiple times before, nobody knows your child better than you, and so you've kind of got to take that. And while I totally agree that sometimes professionals have an outside look that can be very helpful, they do not live what you live with or what you live through. So you can always take their advice, but I would always take it with maybe like a little bit of a pinch of salt, because, they can't see what's going on under the surface. So it's not that their advice isn't helpful, it's just maybe not 100% tweaked for you. But, that's kind of the first brick of your journey. You start building up and you're like, okay. And then you kind of build your own manual of, okay, I've gone through this situation before. This is what helped me then. Maybe this can help me now.
Yeah, transferable skills. We have to finish, but amazingly, we've shot through an hour. I hope it's of been interest to so many of you. Thank you so much, Yasmin, for joining me today. And we look forward to seeing you next week. I know that there is something on the agenda next week, but Yasmin will tell me, and then we can tell you all what to expect next week. In the meantime, I would like to remind you all that in 2 days, well, in fact, tomorrow evening, I will be in Manchester preparing with Katie, a lovely parent who's very kindly volunteered to come and help support me. We will be at the Manchester Autism Show exhibition on Friday and Saturday. So if you're wondering what to do with your time and you're near to Manchester, do come and join us and say hello. Have a lovely week, and we will see you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye for now.